There's always the question ethically about when, you know, a photographer with gear comes into a setting, whether they actually make the setting or they allow the setting to happen and they photograph it. You know, that's a real ethical fine line that I'm sure John and I both try to tread on our own terms. You know, my personality styles, I tend to kind of go in and push things a little bit and want to see how far we can push the envelope. John's personal style is he likes to kind of go in, kind of let the dust settle, kind of, you know, play the humble kind of card a little bit and see what happens. So I think those two styles, even though they're opposing, they work really well in this instance, because there's certain times where, you know, I felt maybe waiting around wouldn't get the shot, and so we pushed a little bit and he's allowed that. And other times, you know, he said, you know, hey, don't push so much, this is what we need. And so that let the dust settle approach has worked really well. So I think both those styles work well. For us to actually decide whether or not we're going to allow a shot to happen or create a shot, that's always something that you have to answer as well, because it's for us to tell the story. Sometimes telling the story is allowing the shot to happen, coming across it happenstance, being lucky, planning it, or for example, maybe just saying, okay, Mr. and Mrs. whatever, can we just move you to the right a little bit to get this in the background to help tell the story more. So in this project, we really tried to be hands-off as much as we can. Obviously, the background's a more hands-on approach, but the hands-off approach, I think, is really what helps tell the story when you're not controlling it. It's not your story, it's just the story.
It's been interesting to find our reception, whether it's overseas or domestically. Like we went to 2 locations in Texas and Vermont, and the ironic thing is that we're received better overseas and when there's a language barrier almost. Maybe it's because we're just kind of something special, but you know, I find that when we've tried to photograph actually in the United States, it's been very difficult, and sometimes just a little bit difficult, but they don't let you kind of do whatever you want. You know, our shoot in Argentina or here even in Mongolia, you know, there was really anything we could do. So, I mean, people have been really receptive. And in Asia in particular, I've known that from the past too, that people really don't mind having their photographs taken in Asia.
So socially, what I think really impedes, what we feel impedes the speed at which we want to photograph is what we call the big sit. You know, we come to the place every time, people are glad to see us, we're an oddity, kids follow us, whatever. We come into wherever they're staying, be it Kenya, you know, Mongolia, India, into the residence. There's this social kind of environment goes around. Everybody sits down, we share either milk tea, some sort of hot drink, some sort of funky goat whatever meal. We share something, and it's called the big sit. Everybody sits around and we greet one another and we talk, and sometimes we kind of sit there a little anxiously waiting because the light kind of fades a little bit and we want to get going, or we saw the perfect horse and rider and cattle herdsman outside and we really want to get back to shooting, but it's the big sit. It's what you do here. You engage people, you talk with them, you be a part of their lives before you can take a part of it in the photograph, and that's just the way it is when you travel.
When we were here, then we realized they're even making alcohol from milk, which is pretty amazing. So they ferment the milk yogurt to a point, and then they distill it using kind of a rudimentary distillation process, and yeah, they get like about 16–20% alcohol from it, so it's pretty amazing. The other alcohol of choice in Mongolia, which was also a surprise to us, was mare's milk, which is milk from horses. I guess they need to be milked every 2 hours. It's put into a big vat in the ger, and it's kind of aerated and stirred up every so often, and that helps it kind of grow a bacteria, not that differently than you would do with you know, a beer or whatever, just a natural yeasting process. And I had kind of conflicting reports, but I think it's about, you know, maybe 5 to 6% alcohol. I mean, it kind of depends on how the age of the mare's milk, but it was very popular to be shared with everyone. It would come out in a bowl, kind of like a cereal bowl, and then you drink from that, and then you pass it on with 2 hands. You know, and it was a funky flavor, but you know, I think, well, if I was here for 6 months, it might grow on me, but it was interesting.
This is round 3. They really like us. Mare's milk. Man's milk.
Grows on you.
What's it from?
From horses.
What's it taste like?
Horses. It's all horses.
It's your turn, Dad.
It's your turn.
There's certainly a lot of wow when you're looking at this travel and interacting with cultures, is that wow, people still do this kind of thing, or they still live this way, or you know, in Mongolia, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the address even states this is the middle of nowhere, and these people are in these like little yurts, you know, these gers, and they're living really simply, and it's cold, and they're just bucking up and doing it. And then, you know, you go to Kenya, and you know, it's kind of the same kind of thing. People are just living simplistically, and you know, they got a spear and, you know, a milk bucket and a place to flop and a little bit of fire, and they just, you know, cook their food, and that's how they live. And so that's been a real eye-opener. But what's been a real eye-opener for me in particular on most of these travels is just the way that the people live around each other. They're hospitable, they're humble, they're respectful, they have a code of ethics, you know, that they're just givers because they not only expect to be given, but they're just givers just because that's who they are. And that's been really great to see other cultures just be so so kind to one another, and I think that's been really refreshing to me.
Legacy I want coming away from this project, beyond my own personal just enjoyment of seeing all these cultures, which is a huge part of it, is that I'd like to document these cultures, because in 20, 30 years, I think they're all, you know, continue to change, and some of these cultures won't be what they are today.
Just inviting me on this trip was great, but the amount of lives that this project impacted thus far and will impact in the future, just because people can connect with shared experiences, I think is invaluable.